Welcome back, everyone. So in today's video, we're going to talk about some text editor strategy. So the interesting thing about using a text editor for writing instead of a WYSIWYG program like Microsoft Word or something like that, or a Google Doc, is that you have some logical considerations you can make rather than just aesthetic choices like what font you're using or lines and margins and things like that. You can actually sit back and think, well, what's the best way I'm actually physically laying out the ideas here? So I have just 4 paragraphs of an old science fiction story I found on the internet for demonstration purposes. And you'll notice in these 4 paragraphs, there's a hard line break after every sentence. So this is not just some weird thing that I do. I've seen other people do this. I've seen certain documentation that's written this way so that as it's exported to multiple formats, these line breaks disappear. The key thing here is that the blank line between these paragraphs is what makes it a paragraph. So when I export this from org mode, say, these will just be normal flowing paragraphs in the document, whether it's an HTML document or if it's becoming a Word document or a PDF. This doesn't really matter. So the question would be, why write with sentences on individual lines? There's a few interesting benefits that you get. One, of course, being you can more easily transpose sentences. The default transpose sentence function in Emacs is very specific in how you use it. For example, by default, you need to have 2 spaces at the end of a sentence or at the beginning of a sentence for Emacs to know it's a sentence. That's a setting you can customize. But basically laying it out this way, I can just do meta and shift and I can move my sentences around and rearrange them if I want to. And you might think, well, how often does that come up? Is that really important? But that is actually something that I do frequently. It's something that it comes up regularly in the editing process, because I think sometimes when you're just writing things down, you might write something down in a certain order when you're just initially putting it down, and then as you go back later, you'll realize that you kind of thought through it backward. So you'll realize maybe the more interesting or powerful sentence was toward the end, and you might want to move it up a little bit and tweak things around like that. And that happens pretty frequently. So that's a big help, organizing and transposing sentences with just one key command. Also, you'll notice here that there are some of these sentences that are small and some that are so long they're actually going off the screen here. So you can use something like visual line mode to do a soft line break at the end, and you'll see the sentence is still on its own line. This whole long sentence is still on line 8, even though it's visually represented by 3 different lines. Typically, though, I prefer to let them just go off the page, because to me that's an indicator that, hey, that's a long sentence. Maybe I want to go and change that. Is it too long? Why is it rambling on like that? Or do I just want to leave it that way? And again, that's fine. But yeah, so you can actually visualize your sentences this way. It's also something that can help for pacing. If you've got, let's say, like an action scene or things are moving quickly, maybe you want a burst of short sentences rather than some long talky sentences. So it's an easy way to kind of visualize that for pacing purposes. And also I find that if you have a pretty long paragraph, like maybe 10 to 12 lines, it's just easier to visualize it this way instead of like having a visual line wrap and just going through the sentence forward and backward in kind of a big chunk. Actually seeing it laid out in lines is easier to work with, I find. And also, if this is something that matters to you, using relative line numbers like I have it here, I can just place the point between 2 paragraphs and see, this paragraph is 4 sentences long because it's 4 lines right there. Yeah, that might be kind of granular, but hey, that's more data. It's more helpful. You can kind of think, well, this paragraph is 10 sentences long. Maybe that's too many. Maybe I'll take 2 off of there, or I'll change that up somehow. And also, if you're using Git for version control, you can kind of see your diffs. If you see what changed, you can more accurately see what changed on that individual line instead of one big chunk, one big paragraph as a line. it doesn't tell you as accurately what exactly changed in that line. So you get more accurate diffs, basically. Yeah, and again, as I said before, when you export this to its final destination format, these line breaks, of course, are just ignored. With one exception that I found, though, for some reason in WordPress, when I'm doing this or writing a blog post for WordPress, I can't actually use this technique. I have to do visual line wrapping because WordPress preserves these hard line breaks. Even if I export this to HTML, of course, org mode will keep the line breaks in there, but HTML, it's supposed to just flow if it's a paragraph element. For some reason, WordPress doesn't do that. It will actually put BR tags on the line breaks in your paragraph, so it'll keep these line breaks. That's one issue with this. Depending on your delivery format, if you're writing for WordPress, it might preserve those line breaks, in which case that might be a problem for you. But in general, this has worked for me. I certainly wouldn't recommend something to you unless I had kind of put it through its paces. And I like this. I've done this for a few months now. I've laid out all of my stories this way, and it's definitely a preferable way to work. So try it out. But all right, I'm going to leave the video there, and thank you all for watching. See you next time.